thanks to you people out there, my friends in YouTube land, I have solved the problem. You will see what I've done on this video. Stay tuned. Welcome to part 7 of building Uncle Dorkel. I added a hook here and a hook here. And they're not cup hooks, but little eyelets, and I cut them so that they are like cup hooks. And I had to screw them into some fiber board because that's the only way I could hold them to the head besides siliconing them in here. And what that's going to do is it's going to enable me to put a spring from here to here and from here to here for the self-centering of the eye. So I'm going to put those springs in right now. Well, I may have to put little tighter springs in there, little shorter ones or whatever. It doesn't really want to keep it in center. I didn't think I'd be able to keep it in center very good. But I'm going to move the control down below here and let it go. And pull it over here, let it go. I can see that it's not perfect, but I'm going to have to play around with this a little bit. And these springs need to be a little tighter. But that's the general idea. They just slip in anyways. I can just pull them right out, see? Not a problem. And when I get them to work right, then I'll put a little cap on here to keep them from popping off. I can always try some small rubber bands for now and put them in here instead of the springs. We'll come back on this part of it later. Right now we got to try to do something with this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try something very daring here. I'm going to cut this off here. Then, after I cut this off, I'm going to cut this right off at that red plug in there. After I do that, I'm going to chop further back here, very carefully not to cut this. Take out that red plug, with the aluminum plug that's in there with the hole in the middle. And I'm going to cut a slot here, and I'm going to do my thing here. I'm going to cut it down to here and get rid of this stock here, put another coupling in here and add that extension on here. So that way I can operate with my thumb this way. So instead of the throw being over here on the front and trying to operate it this way, the throw is going to be back here. My hand will come down lower. If I have to extend this down, I can. Then I can operate something like this with my thumb. I will have to put a coupling. I have to take this red plug, aluminum plug that I got here. I got a screw in it. So I'll have to dig that out of there. I can do that once I cut all this out of here. Slide the plug up into here and give me the throw I need. I might even use that wooden one instead of the aluminum. But that will eliminate it. It won't eliminate the clicking that you hear, but I'm not worried about that. If I can get this thing to work with my thumb going. Alright, this will be in the front like it is now. It's the back of the head, of course. Where this hole is, there'll be a slot here cut. So I'll be able to do one of these things. I should be able to do it quite nicely. If I can't do that, I give up. Okay, so I'm going to start cutting and I'll come back on this video in a minute. Okay, she's cut off. Now, I get my bolt cutters and we'll cut this off. That's it. She's at the point of no return now. This way will enable me to slide this up, get this off, and we'll make the slot here. When we make the slot here, I'll bend it up. This will give me the necessary thing to bend it on. It's almost like putting it in a vise, but not quite. That's the idea of putting this in there also, to keep it centered, but not only to keep it centered, but to give me a point where I can bend this over at right angles. Because if I didn't have this in there, you'd never get a good bend in it. We'll come back on this video in a minute. Alright, I had to be very careful not to cut the brass rod and mess it up, but this is the plug. I gotta either reuse this plug or make one out of wood. So now I got enough material here to bring it up and make a slot where this black line is. And of course, naturally, I got to make a groove in here, because I can't possibly, that's what the idea of why I made the groove, I should say, originally, is because I got to be able to bring that up and bend it up at right angles. So what I'm going to do right now is to get the measurement from here below the black line for the coupler that I'm going to be putting in here, and then I'll cut off more material here so that the coupler will stop at this point here, so there'll be a nice smooth place on the bottom of this coupler and on the top of the coupler that's going to come up against here. But I got to cut the groove first. I'm going to do that now. Okay, I've cut this so that the coupler goes right to here. And if you notice in here, this bolt is keeping this thing off center, and that's where the clicking is. I'm going to try to put some of this 1/4 inch tubing, and I'm going to slide it down in there so that this will ride inside the 1/4 inch tubing. And hopefully it won't cause that problem. The only thing is, it's going to keep this away from here even more of an angle, which might make this hard to turn. We'll see. We got to put the plug in here yet, that red plug, or I got to use the wooden one, either one. But the red aluminum one is going to have to be inserted, even if it's only temporary, after I make the slot here, so I can bend this up at a 90 degree like this. Obviously you can't do that until you cut a slot in here. When the coupler goes over, I'll glue it. I have some model airplane glue. I'll just put on there, because PVC cement, you got to buy a big container of it, and I'll never use it. So I got some plastic glue somewhere around that I used for this, and I'll just slide that on. But that's when I add the extension to the neck, which is going to have to come down more. Unfortunately, it's going to be a little bigger here, but if I have two couplers close together, it should be fairly comfortable. But down here, I'll have the 1.25 inch stock, so it's going to be an uneven feel down here, but I think we can get used to that. And hopefully that works. I have to make sure that this swing is going to be wide enough, so I'm going to try to cut a little more on each end here. Come back on the video in a minute. It's not easy cutting the groove in this. I don't have a decent Dremel tool. That little cheap Chinese junk I bought at a Ocean State job lot is, Christ, you put any load on it at all, the motor almost comes to a stall. So I had to take my little saw and cut a groove in here. This is to protect the brass rod from getting scratched up, and also protect the saw. I have to have a groove in here so that when I take the metal, the brass rod, and bend it up on a 90, after I insert this brass plug, which will be in here, this will give me a bending point here. In addition to that, I put in, I don't know if you can see it, I cut off some of this here, and I inserted it down into the shaft here so that this brass rod rides inside this 1/4 inch tubing, so it doesn't clack into this. But as you can see, it's not centered. There's not much you can do about it, but experimented and put some strain on it. And we'll just put this piece in here and we'll pull it. We'll hold it over the opposite way, and the eye mechanism works good. Right now it's out of the slot, but that's okay because I got to do some adjustment anyways. But see, it moves pretty freely. So even though I'm pushing it off to one side, it's riding inside this plastic 1/4-inch pipe, so it's not going to be rubbing hard against this stud. I can't take this out because I need that for my pull ring for the jaw. I need that support there, and also that nylon bushing that I put in there. I have to have that, otherwise that part will not work right. After about an hour of filing and trying to cut this without nicking this, I finally got the groove in here that I can bring this over and bend it over at a 90. Before I can do that, I got to put that plug in. But this thing is not centered, so it's going to be real tough in there. Success. Now you can see why I had to have a slot there. Now my thumb will be able to, I'll make a thumb ring in here and I'll be able to do this. And then I put the coupling on here, of course. What I did is I used the wooden plug, because the metal one, the aluminum one, the red one, has a lot of dings in it, and this is going to get bound in there. I put it in so that the thing being that it's off center because of this, and it's in a plastic 1/4-inch pipe. That's why it's off center here a little bit, but as you can see, I got full throw. I want to make mention that this is one suggestion, putting this on the back of the thing. One of my YouTube friends suggested this, so again I want to give credit to that particular individual that suggested this. I can't keep track of everybody who made the suggestions, but I'm telling you what, I appreciate every single suggestion. Even if they wouldn't work in my situation, I appreciate everything. I appreciate all the effort that, you know, because not many people would even bother helping out somebody, especially an old goat like me. Alright, so what I got to do now is I got to glue the coupling on here. I'll do that off camera. And then put the extension pipe on here as to how long I'm going to make it and cut it off. But I gotta before I do that, I gotta make some kind of a loop in here too. So I want to be able to make a loop so I can put my thumb in there and go like this. And if I have to put a little padding on the thumb, I can do that too. That's not a problem. I'll make this so that it will work that way. I also can, of course there's no handle on here now. I could also make it a knob, so I'd have to go back and forth like this. So I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with this, but at least I got it in there. And it is pretty stiff. So I don't think I'm going to be able to, the springs or elastics won't do much with the self-centering, because there is some resistance there. There's not much I can do about it, but at least it works full function. What I did is I glued this coupling in here, pushed it up so it acts as a bearing surface here. Unfortunately, there's a ding here because I was trying to file out that groove, and between that and using the saw and everything, so there's not much I can do about that. But she's riding smoothly now, so we're going to let this glue set up. And this stuff here is, I don't know, impossible to get anymore. You know, this tube here is I'm going to say 10 years old, believe it or not. Can't find it anymore, and it's the only thing that'll work on this, plastic model cement. So I guard that like gold. Can't find this stuff anymore, other than the PVC cement, which is, of course, more than I'll ever need. So we'll get back on this project when this stuff sets up.